and found the way out. 866-482-LIFE.
We're the only country in the world where a person comes in, has a baby, and the baby is essentially a citizen of the United States for 85 years with all of those benefits.
This president has radicalized so many more people than ISIS ever did.
We're going to build tent cities. We're going to put tents up all over the place.
The way he winks and nods to these groups, the way he says, I know I'm not supposed to say it, but I'm a nationalist.
For her to say that the President of the United States has radicalized more people than ISIS is irresponsible.
The very first thing that the president did was condemn the attacks both in Pittsburgh and in the pipe bombs. The very first thing the media did was blame the president.
We're going to have tents. They're going to be very nice, and they're going to wait, and if they don't get asylum, they get out.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy, and welcome to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name, fastest 60 minutes in American media. I'm your congenial, convivial, amiable, and effervescent host.
As always.
And it's great to be with you on this brand new broadcast of Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio. Now I want to turn our attention right away to the Word of God. We're going to be looking at a passage I think is profoundly important, where Jeremiah is looking ahead specifically to the ministry of Jesus Christ and the work that he did. What Jeremiah talks about in this segment, speaking for the Lord speaking through Jeremiah, is that the days were going to come when he would establish with us a new covenant, replacing the old covenant, replacing it with a new covenant. Let's read what he says here. Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah, not like the covenant that I made with their fathers on the day when I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt. My covenant that they broke, though I was their husband, declares the Lord. But, in contrast, this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days. I will put my law within them, and I will write it on their hearts. And I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And no longer shall each one teach his neighbor and each his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquities, and I will remember their sin no more. That's absolutely great stuff. This is the covenant that Jesus inaugurated, remember, with the disciples on the night of the Passover meal. He said, this cup is the new covenant in my blood. So that night he inaugurated the new covenant that Jeremiah had prophesied here in Jeremiah 31. Now, the old covenant is the law of Moses and the entire ritual system, ceremonial system of the Old Testament. You know, you read through it, it's nothing but sacrifices, 5 different sacrifices depending on the nature of the offense. You've got 3 days where everybody is supposed to be in Jerusalem. Everybody from around the world is supposed to be in Jerusalem for those 3 days. You have priests. You have sacrificial rituals. You have red heifers being sacrificed in the nearby ravine, and the blood used to deal with a murder where nobody could be found. You had all this kind of stuff going on. You had the temple. You had the tabernacle where they met with God. The entire Old Covenant system is what God is talking about here, and he says the day is going to come when I'm going to replace that whole thing. I'm going to replace the Old Covenant. Now, it's like a treaty. If you want to use the word treaty, that might help you understand a little bit. You know, the United States has entered treaties. We've broken treaties. We renounce treaties. we have renewed treaties with changes. Now, that's essentially what you have here with the transition from the old covenant centered on the law of Moses and the new covenant centered in the sacrificial work of Jesus Christ. Now, the old covenant is being replaced because the problem was with that the people of Israel could not keep it. It was a great covenant. Nothing wrong with the law of Moses. In fact, it's perfect. It's without flaw. The problem is with us. The problem is that in our fallen humanity, no matter how hard we try, we cannot keep the old covenant. We cannot obey the law of Moses. We can look at it and we can say, look, it's great. It's terrific. And I mean, I've had this experience. I'm sure you've had this experience. You start out on a given day and say, okay, today is going to be the first day of the rest of my life. Today, I'm not going to commit a single sin. I'm going to go this whole day, and I'm not going to sin even once. I can't even get to noon sometimes. And you've had the same experience if you're honest with yourself. And so God says here, look, I found fault with this old covenant. The covenant that I gave to Moses, that's faulty. I'm going to reject it, not because the covenant is at fault, but because you are. You guys are too weak in your humanity to be able to keep the demands of the old covenant. So I'm going to provide a new covenant for you that's going to be different than the old covenant. It's going to replace the old covenants. It's going to have some stuff that's the same. Some stuff is going to carry over. Other stuff we're not going to carry over. We're going to renew this thing, but we're not carrying over every part of the old covenant. For instance, in the Old Covenant, the Mosaic Code, there was a command to observe the Sabbath day and keep it holy. That's Saturday. And God says, we're not going to renew that one under the New Covenant, or if we do, it's going to be the Sabbath day is going to be in relationship to the coming kingdom age, which will be inaugurated when Jesus returns. But that's one you don't have to keep under the New Covenant. All the rest of them, God says, they still belong in the new covenant that you have to keep. Now, you don't have to go through all the sacrifices. You don't have to go all through all the ritual. Why? Why don't you have to go through all of the sacrifices? Because, as the writer of Hebrews says, when Jesus Christ went to the cross for us, he offered one sacrifice for all sins for all time. One sacrifice for all sins for all time. You know, in the Old Covenant, the covenant of Moses, there was a constant reminder of our sinfulness. We never could get past it because every time we sinned, we had to go through this rigmarole of taking a sacrifice to the temple, have it offered on the altar, and so forth. And what does God say about the new covenant? First of all, he says the law is going to be within you. In the old covenant, it was all self-effort. The law's out there. I've got to crank up the best self-effort I can to try to please God. And God says, look, it didn't work. You tried, it didn't work. You failed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write my law not on a tablet of stone. I'm going to write it on the tablet of your human heart. So the standard, my standard, is going to be internal to you. So your obedience now is going to rise internally from your love for me because I've written this law on your heart. And another thing is your sins and iniquities, I'm going to forgive them. And I'm going to remember them no more. I am going to forget all about them. So we drag an old sin into God's presence. And he says, what are you doing hauling that thing around? I forgave you of that thing on the day my son died. Let go of that thing. Bury that thing. I'm not holding against you. I don't remember it. I can't. What sin are you talking about? I don't even remember it. And so we just need to drop it. Drop it by the road and bury it. I'm going to save the prayer. Well, now I'm going to go ahead and do the prayer. Now, I've got one more thing I want to say after the break, the first break, and we'll talk about that when we come back. But let's join together and do a little bit of praying for ourselves here. Lord God Almighty, we worship you as the God who appoints the sun to shine by day and who decrees the moon and stars to shine by night. I ask for your grace and mercy to be released into my life, the lives of my family, and the listeners of Focal Point this day, and for our President, President Trump. I pray that you will watch over us and our nation to protect us from every work of Satan intended to uproot and tear down, to overthrow and destroy your work. Watch over us, to plant us, and build us up.
Did you know your herds or fields or even your tractor could be used to support the cause of Christ for generations to come? As a farmer or rancher, you know the value of cultivating your resources. Crops are sown, harvests are stored or sold depending on the best price. Sometimes it makes sense to feed your crop to your own animals. It takes heart and shrewd management to keep your operation going. If your heart is for the Lord, consider designating your assets in a way that makes sense for your family while at the same time supporting the American Family Association. A representative of the AFA Foundation can show you how to bless AFA long after your own needs have been met. Contact the AFA Foundation at 800-326-4543, extension 345, or email foundation@afa.net. Learn how to make the most of your resources and leave a legacy to continue the work of the American Family Association.
And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. Acts 17:26 conveys to us the reality that we were born and placed in the 21st century by God's specific design. He determined before time where we would live and when we would live there. If you're in Minnesota, Mississippi, or Maine, God put you there on purpose. He's not surprised by the darkness we see around us, nor is he caught off guard by it. In fact, he specifically prepared for it by making sure you're alive right now. God can do whatever he wants, but he's chosen to use you and me as ambassadors of his kingdom. We are his torches to light up the darkness.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy from my home state of Idaho. I don't know where I picked that up, but that's how I greet everybody now. I mean, everybody anywhere, it's howdy. I don't know where I picked that up. I think Ms. Hello is too kind of stilted. And if you say hi, it's just like too short. So you need something a little bit longer, but I don't want to say hello. Who says hello anymore? So I came up with howdy.
You know, this is real special. One of our listeners contacted me and said, I love it when he says that because my daddy used to say that all the time.
I remember that.
And every time Brian says that, it reminds me of my dad.
My daddy, yeah. All right. And by the way, down here in the South, you're always a daddy. If you're a father, I mean, that's one of the things that struck me when I moved down here. If your father's still alive, it doesn't matter how old you are, doesn't matter how old he is, you still refer to him as my daddy. So anyway, that's what goes on down here in the South. Now, one other comment I wanted to make about the new covenant is that in the new covenant, the old covenant, all the pressure is on us. Remember what the standard of the old covenant is do this and you will live. Remember that? Do this and you will live. You want to live, you got to do this. So where's the pressure to produce? Where's the pressure to manifest the life of God? It's on us and our ability relying upon our own resources to make something happen in response to what God is directing us to do. But in the terms of the new covenant, all the pressure is on God. He's going to write his laws in our heart. He's going to forgive us of our sins. We are going to know God. Everybody will know God. We don't even have to go about the business of telling our neighbors to know God, because they will know God, will have gotten there before us. And he says God is going to forgive our sins, and he's not going to remember them anymore. I remember a story about a guy who had a war injury, World War II, and he had lost his short-term memory. He couldn't remember anything that had happened more than about 3 to 5 minutes ago. And so his brother would go in, and every time his brother would go in to visit him in the hospital, he had to reintroduce himself to his own brother because his own brother could not remember him. Now, of course, it's unfortunate and it's a sad deal, but here's the one thing. Let's imagine, for the sake of argument, that you'd done something really, really rasty to that guy. I mean, what you had done was really, really rasty. And you knew you had to go see him the next day. imagine the relief it would be to know when you walked in the room that he had forgotten all traces of that event, had no memory of it whatsoever. It was gone. And this is what God says the provision is for us under the terms of the new covenant. I will remember your sin no more. Forget all about it. You can come into my presence anytime that you choose. All right, that's a little bit of instruction from the book of Jeremiah. Now let's, we got the overtime segment today again, don't forget. It'll start at 2:07 or thereabouts. I'll head to my office and get the camera cranked up and going. I think I've got most of the trouble worked out. So is this the?
I saw marks on all of them.
So. Yeah, I don't know what I did with it. Maybe I've got my my extra stories. Maybe they're here somewhere. Yeah, I'm not seeing them. I do not know. Yeah, here it is. Here we go. Here's all of them right here.
Yeah.
Right there.
What was the story you were just telling about a guy that
couldn't remember stuff? Yeah. I think we are distantly related is what I think. Anyway, you better hand me the cap there, Jeff.
Oh, yeah.
We better go to the cap here. All right, this is a little challenge that Jeff gave me since he's a big Boston Red Sox fan. I'm not. I mean, Sox are fine with me. I don't have any animosity toward them. But he was pumped about his Red Sox. The Red Sox won the World Series. And so Jeff challenged me to don a Red Sox cap. Do we still have the banner up here?
No.
What happened to the pennant?
I had to take that down.
All right. So anyway, I've got my Boston Red Sox cap on, and I'll wear it at least for one segment in Jeff's honor and in honor of the Boston Red Sox.
That's a good reason for people to try and tune in to Facebook Live, YouTube, or on the Roku channel tonight.
Okay. There you go.
Little plug for
sneak
our video.
Preview. Yeah, you bet. Okay, and the Boston Red Sox, I think it's the fourth time they've won the World Series, like in the last 15 years.
Yeah, they
something like
once
that.
they broke the curse of the Bambino, they've been all right.
A lot of people don't know that Babe Ruth started out his major league career with the Boston Red Sox, and the day they traded him was the day that the curse of the goat or whatever went into effect.
Oh, yeah, they had a goat. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And they never won a title again for like 108 years or something like that. All right. Well, let's turn our attention to the content for today. You know, there's still a lot of conversation out there about Jeff's going to memorialize it with a picture, I guess.
I
All right.
Let
me smile. Let me smile for the camera.
Smile.
Okay. There you go.
All right.
That makes good radio.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah. Just visualize it, ladies and gentlemen. Now, this really athletic-looking guy with this really cool cap and, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
anyway.
actually looked like a pretty good first base coach.
Well.
Get you a uniform.
Notice he didn't say it looks like a first baseman.
Oh,
like
yeah.
I can wave my arms with the best of them. Now, anyway, we've had a lot of a Sturm und Drang over who's to blame for the shooting in the synagogue, this tragic loss of 11 lives. And the media immediately began pointing fingers at Donald Trump. It is Donald Trump's fault. He's the one is to blame. Donald Trump is the guy that we are going to point the finger at. So that became an issue very early and was repeated kind of ad nauseum on the Talking Snake media. Here's a woman by the name of Julia Yaffe. She's on, I don't know what network she's on, but the guy by the name of Dave Urban is on the same panel, and he responds to her, and listen to how wild her charge is against Donald Trump, just completely unhinged, her accusation against Donald Trump. Clip number 1.
This president has radicalized so many more people than ISIS ever did. I mean, the way he talks, the way he
it's unconscionable.
the way that he allows these people, the way he winks and nods to these groups, the way he says, I know I'm not supposed to say it, but I'm a nationalist, the way that he hems and haws when he has to condemn these people and kind of gritting his teeth, kind of says, fine, okay, I condemn this, but then, and all
Jake,
his...
for you not to push back on that.
You're about to push back on, but to bring...
That's irresponsible. For her to say that the President of the United States has radicalized more people than ISIS is irresponsible.
Yeah. And he challenged, it was CNN, because he challenged Jake Tapper, look, you got to push back on that. He got right in Jake Tapper's grill. Look, you got to push back on that. saying that he's radicalized more people than ISIS. That's absurd. It's insane. And Jake Tapper did not push back on it. In fact, he had a really lame defense on Twitter. He said, well, we got some people on the panel that disagreed with that assessment and kind of set the record straight. So, again, the media, their meme is that it's the rhetoric of Donald Trump. He's to blame for this. And here is Sarah Sanders. Here's her comment about that. Remember, the media's first instinct was to try to hang this around Donald Trump's neck as an anvil. Blame him for it, blame his rhetoric for it. He provoked these people, he stirred them up when they took action. How can you blame them? You got to blame Donald Trump. He's the one feeding the fire. Here's what Sarah Sanders said, clip number 2.
The very first thing that the president did was condemn the attacks both in Pittsburgh and in the pipe bombs. The very first thing the media did was blame the president and make him responsible for these ridiculous acts. That is outrageous that would be the very first reaction of so many people across this country. I'm not finished. The only person responsible for carrying out either of these heinous acts were the individuals who carried them out. It's not the president, no more than it was Bernie Sanders' fault for the individual who shot up a baseball field of congressional Republicans. You can't start putting the responsibility of individuals on anybody but the individual who carries out the crime.
You know, and that's a uniquely biblical point of view, isn't it? You don't hold anybody responsible but the one who carried out the crime. Remember, Ezekiel said, a couple of very prominent passages in Ezekiel says where the father is not to be put to death for the sin of the son, and the son is not to be put to death for the sin of the father. Each one shall die for his own sin. So that emphasizes the individual responsibility. We blame the person that made the choice to commit this crime, not those that may have had some irresponsible even rhetoric about it. You know, because all of us, I'm talking to all of us now, we all hear irresponsible rhetoric. We all get worked up over things in the political world, but we don't go off and shoot people or send them pipe bombs. So the fact that somebody, I mean, think about what we hear on CNN every day. You know, Rob told me he didn't even watch television over the weekend because it's too aggravating. And so he just watched football and baseball all weekend. So we get worked up.
That was aggravating.
Yeah. You know, we get agitated. But again, we have enough self-control that we just don't go off and start shooting people at random because somebody said something that we didn't happen to like. So Sarah Sanders, I think, is a very good point. You know, the first thing that Donald Trump did was to, was to blame the guy that did it. The first thing the media did was to blame Donald Trump. So Donald Trump condemns the attacks. The media condemns him. That's how the thing started playing out right away. Now, here's Alison Camerota on CNN. And she's talking to the rabbi of this synagogue where the shooting happened. And remember, the meme now, CNN, has just been constant. Trump is to blame. It's Trump's fault. He's the one that's stirring up all of this hatred. His rhetoric is to blame for this. It's totally irresponsible. So Alison Camerota is bringing on the rabbi because she wants the rabbi to publicly repudiate Donald Trump. She wants the rabbi to say, no, the president is not welcome here because it's his rhetoric that's to blame for the people that died in my synagogue. Here's how their exchange went. Clip 3.
President Trump has talked about coming to Pittsburgh in the aftermath of this. Do you want him to come?
The president of the United States is always welcome. I'm a citizen. He's my president. He's certainly welcome.
Certainly welcome. Tough darts, Allison. The rabbi said if Donald Trump wants to come to my synagogue, he is welcome anytime. He's not only our president, he is my president. So the rabbi clearly not blaming the president for what had happened. Now, so that blows the talking snake media narrative completely out of the water. You're either going to believe what CNN is telling you, or you're going to listen to the rabbi of the synagogue where these people died. I'm going with the rabbi on this one. Now, here's the president talking about what could have been different. And listen to how encouraging it is. What he says here, this is something we have waited for decades for a president to say. Let's listen.
This has little to do with it. If you take a look, if they had protection inside, the results would have been far better. This is a dispute that will always exist, I suspect. But if they had some kind of a protection inside the temple, maybe it could have been a very much different situation.
All right, so the president is saying, look, what you need in a situation, I'm just paraphrasing here. What you need in a situation like this is a good guy with a gun, and there wasn't a good guy with a gun. We'll be right back.
This is Dr. Richard Land, president of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. Our nation's heart is broken by the despicable hate crime violence of the murder of 11 people at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. Anti-Semitism is one of the oldest hatreds and violent prejudices that take root in the human heart. I believe the irrational hatred of the Jews is satanic in origin. How else do you explain this virulent hatred of Jews as an international phenomenon when the object of this hatred is a worldwide population of Jews that totals well less than 20 million people? The current alleged perpetrator, Robert Bowers, 46, was well known as an extreme anti-Semite, spewing forth the most hateful and vitriolic and scurrilous attacks on Jews collectively. Bowers reportedly began his deadly assault in the synagogue, screaming, "All Jews must die." After a desperate gun battle with police in which both Bowers and 4 officers were wounded, the gunman was arrested. Make no mistake, all prejudice and bigotry is based in ignorance and hatred. Jesus said, "Love your neighbor as yourself." That includes our enemies. Of all prejudices, the most irrational of all of them must be for Christians to be anti-Semitic. Jesus, our Lord and Savior, the promised Messiah, is Jewish. Born of the Virgin Mary, he was a descendant of David through his mother. We must condemn this terrible act of violence and reaffirm the Christian and American values that are laid down in the Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which includes the freedom to worship as we please. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio. Listen to the audio podcast or download today's program at afr.net. You can also read Brian Fisher's columns at afa.net.
Howdy, and welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Good to have you in the conversation. You know, and so I'm happy to hear the president talking about the need for internal security. He's making the point, look, if you'd had one good guy with a gun in there, that attack on the synagogue could have been stopped before it got completely out of hand. So what does it take to stop a bad guy with a gun? It takes a good guy with a gun. If you got a bad guy with a gun and there's no good guy with a gun in there to stop him, then the result is going to be a lot of dead bodies. And kudos to the president for saying that.
And we had a similar incident at a McDonald's here recently.
Yes. Yeah, down in Alabama. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you heard about this. A father was coming out of a McDonald's with his 2 sons, and some guy came in with a gun, and the father was concealed carry permit holder. He went back in and shot the bad guy dead. Bad guy died in the McDonald's. He wasn't going to let this bad guy go after innocent people, not let him go after his own sons.
That could have turned out very, very bad.
Yeah, you know, you've got some pretty major, I mean, one of the major mass shootings of all time happened in a McDonald's in San Diego. Similar situation down in San Ysidro, down in that area. All right. Now, of course, the caravan is continuing to roll toward America. Donald Trump, I'm going to say for the last segment, brother, I'm going to talk about birthright citizenship because the president raised that issue today. He said, I'm going to, by executive order, I'm going to get rid of birthright citizenship, and I'm going to talk with you about that. So we'll save that for the last segment of the day. But the caravan continues to roll on. Don't forget this invading army. They turned down the president of Mexico. He said, the law says they've got to seek asylum the first peaceful country they come to. That was Mexico. That's what the law says. First place of refuge you come to, you got to apply for asylum and refuge there. That's Mexico. They didn't do it. They turned down the president. He was offering them jobs, offering them free health care, offering them education. They said, no thanks. We want to go to the United States because we're part of an invading army. What does an invading army do? It comes in to conquer and to plunder. We want to go to the United States and plunder the United States of their wealth. We are an invading army. That's essentially the tone of what this invading caravan is saying. And by conquest, I mean, they're intending to conquer America through immigration, like Muslims are doing in Europe. How are Muslims taking over Europe? Just through immigration. You know, Angela Merkel, she's done because the German people said, we've had enough of that. It's open immigration. It's killing us. You know, just last night there was another story about 8 Muslim refugees raping an 18-year-old German girl, like for 4 hours. Everybody just took turns. And that's what's going on. That's just happening over and over again throughout Europe. And the German people said, look, that's it. You know, we had that New Year's celebration a couple of years ago. 12 to 1,300 German girls were assaulted. We're done with that. Angela, we're not voting for you again. You got to go find something else to do. We need to bring somebody in who is going to tighten things up. You know, and speaking of tightening things up, you know, Hungary built a wall. We talked about this, but Hungary built a border wall just in the last couple of years. I mean, it can be done. You just go out there and do it. You know, and Hungary, they've got a guy that says, look, we are a Christian country. Viktor Orban, one of my heroes, he said Hungary is a Christian country. By history, tradition, values, and religion, we are a Christian country. We are proud of our history. We are proud of our Christian traditions, and we are going to stay very openly and visibly a Christian country. If you're a Muslim, you're not welcome here because your religion is completely incompatible with our faith. There's no compatibility between Islam and Christianity. And so Viktor Orban's saying, you stay home. You're going to you're going to deteriorate the cultural fabric and cultural unity that we have right now. Same thing we're dealing with here in the United States. Why I've advocated from day one that we just block Muslim immigration. No more Muslim immigration, because if we allow it to continue at the pace it's going, we're not even going to recognize America. It's just going to be this mishmash, this kind of stew of all kinds of different competing ideologies, religious points of view, values, and cultures, and it's not going to be a good thing because there's no strength in diversity. Don't let anybody lie to you about that. Strength comes from unity. Unity of purpose, unity of ideals. What's the first thing the military does when you show up? They cut your hair so that your head looks like the head of every other soldier. There's no diversity in the military. They put you in the same exact uniform. They send you through the same exact training, give you exactly the same weapons. What happens when you show up to try out for your high school basketball team and you make it? What do? They give you exactly the same uniform to wear. You want to show up wearing your own uniform because you're a fan of multiculturalism and diversity? You're going to be sitting on the bench until you change your mind. So unity, strength comes from unity. Unity of value and unity of purpose. That's how the United States became the most powerful nation in the world, because of our fundamental unity, a unity around the Judeo-Christian tradition, the truth claims of Christianity, Jesus Christ being the Savior of the world, the Ten Commandments providing the moral guide for all of life. But Hungary, I said, built this border wall, and so Charlie Kirk does a little fact-checking here, because the narrative out there is that Hungary reduced illegal immigration by 99% with their border wall. That just sounds almost too fantastic to be true. So Charlie Kirk says, I'm going to do a little bit of fact-checking. Jeff's over here trying to figure out how to get his baseball cap over his headset.
It's not working
too well. You look kind of cool, though. Got that cap tipped down at kind of a rakish angle.
Yeah.
So anyway, and it turns out...
It's the look of a winner.
The look of a winner. Yeah, when you win the World Series, you can wear your cap any way you want. Yeah. But Charlie Kirk says this narrative out there that Hungary's reduced illegal immigration by 99% is true. I checked it out. I ran the numbers. I did the math. Illegal immigration in Hungary went from 391,000 in 2015. 391,000 illegal immigrants got into the country in 2015. You know how many got in 2017? 1,184. That is a 99.6% increase. I mean, Hungary has virtually reduced illegal immigration to zero. How did they do it? They did it by the construction of border barriers. So can a wall work? Just ask Hungary, ask Viktor Orban. You know, one of the reasons why we're not more intent on building a border wall is we no longer have the kind of love and pride in our country that we used to. I mean, if you have pride in your country, you love your country, you have an allegiance to it, what are you going to want to do? You are going to want to protect it. You're going to want to protect it from people who want to change what America looks like, to change what America is about, to change its value system, to diminish its moral standards, to diminish the unity of our spiritual convictions. But if you love America, you want to protect all those things because that's what made America the greatest nation in the world. So I think it's a loss of love for America, which is why so many Democrats just simply don't care. They don't really love this country anymore, so who cares if we get stampeded by people who are rapists and sex traffickers and human traffickers and drug traffickers? Who cares? And criminals, who cares? Because we don't love our country enough to protect it from these people. Now, so anyway, we see from Hungary, look, fences work, borders work. They can control illegal immigration. Now, here's clip number 5, Donald Trump talking about what we're going to do with this caravan. You know, Kirstjen Nielsen over and over again says this caravan is not coming in to the United States. Donald Trump has been saying exactly the same thing. So what's going to happen when they get here? Here's what Donald Trump says, clip number 5.
If they apply for asylum, we're going to hold them until such time as their trial takes place.
Where? Do we have the facilities?
We're going to build tent cities. We're going to put tents up all over the place. We're not going to build structures and spend all of this, hundreds of millions of dollars. We're going to have tents. They're going to be very nice, and they're going to wait. And if they don't get asylum, they get out.
They get out. Apply for asylum. You sleep in a tent till your asylum case is heard. And only about 20% of the people that actually apply for asylum in the United States actually get it. 80% are turned down. Remember, because the conditions you've got to meet for asylum are fairly narrow. You can't get asylum just because for economic reasons. You can't get asylum just because the crime rate's high in your country. You have a very narrow set of criteria you got to satisfy in order to get asylum. 80% of people can't satisfy it. So most of the people that are going to be stopped at the border and housed in these tent cities, if Donald Trump follows through on this, they're not going to be granted asylum, and they will be sent back to their home country.
And I don't know if you have a story relating to this, but I watched a little bit of the general talking about what their plan is on the border, and it's pretty extensive. They're taking helicopters, C-130s to move troops fairly quickly, command posts. They're going to have night vision and all kinds of stuff. So this is I don't see, even if it's organized, a caravan going against the United States military and coming out ahead in this.
Yeah, just to show a force should be enough to intimidate.
Well, they're not going to be able to sneak through, too. They're going to reinforce different areas and look for weak spots.
Well, and the question is what permission the military is going to be given to use force, and people are talking about the Posse Comitatus Act. Military can't be used to enforce the law against our own citizens. Fine. We're not talking about our own citizens here. We're talking about people that are absolutely illegal, that have no right to be even in this country to begin with. So it's perfectly appropriate for them to use force. They don't have to use lethal force. They don't have to start killing people. But there are all kinds of other displays of force that they can use to hold these people back and keep them out of our country. And Donald Trump said that's what we are going to do. Now, you know how you can tell a desperate Democrat? You can tell the Democrat is absolutely desperate running for office when she starts to agree with Donald Trump. Let's listen to Claire McCaskill, who's in the fight for her life in Missouri.
Stop them at the border.
And what do you do? When they get to the border, what do you do?
I think the president has to use every tool he has at his disposal, and I'm 100% back him up on that. Whether it is turning them back, because we are not equipped to handle that many asylum claims into our system. And by the way, that's one of the issues here.
All right, so Claire McCaskill, she's desperate. all of a sudden, she's agreeing with Donald Trump. She's supporting Donald Trump 100%. She wants this invading army turned back at the border. Claire Open Borders McCaskill saying on this. So desperate to win. Josh Hawley ahead. Be right back.
Kids have questions. In fact, they have some of the most challenging questions you may ever be asked.
Mommy, how do we know God is real? And why does he allow suffering?
Oh, hold on, baby. One question at a time.
Why not prepare yourself with the 21 Toughest Questions DVD set from Focus on the Family and the American Family Association? Dr. Alex McFarland offers insight and clarity to help parents communicate their faith to their children. Order yours today at afastore.net.
This is Franklin Graham, and I've got an idea for Christmas, and that is to fill a shoebox for a child somewhere in the third world. These children live in poverty, and what I'm asking you to do is just take a shoebox and fill it with items for a child. Put toys, school supplies, and then we give these boxes out, and we do this in Jesus' name. And put your picture in there, put your address in there. Maybe the kids can write you back, but we need you to be a part of it. God bless you. Thank you so very much.
Visit SamaritansPurse.org/OCC to get involved.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
My story begins with debt, a lot of debt, credit card debt, and I heard a commercial for Trinity. I gave them a call.
If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
When I first called, I was a little embarrassed and kind of ashamed, and I looked at the numbers and I saw how quickly that astronomical debt that was in my life would go away.
Trinity will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, reduce your interest, and possibly improve your credit score. You'll save thousands.
What I would tell other people, please pick up the phone and call Trinity. Just let them put together a program and see how affordable and easy it is to pay off your debt.
Call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813. That's 1-800-788-1813.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Howdy. Welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Congenial, convivial, and amiable
as
always. Now, what I want to do, well, let's play a couple of sound bites. I didn't get to this one yesterday. I really wanted it. I kept it in reserve. And I told Rob, don't delete this soundbite. This is a soundbite that I definitely want to use. So it's like the motto for Jaws 2. I think it was just when you thought it was safe to go back to the water. Okay? So just when you thought our politics was safe, we have this to deal with.
Do you want to run again?
No.
Wait.
No.
That was a pause.
Well, I'd like to be president.
Okay.
Look, I think, hopefully, when we have a Democrat in the Oval Office in January of 2021, there's going to be so much work to be done. I mean, we have confused everybody in the world, including ourselves. And we have confused our friends and our enemies.
Right.
They have no idea what the United States stands for, what we're likely to do, what we think is important. So the work would be work that I feel very well prepared for, having been in the Senate for 8 years, having been a diplomat.
So, in other words, Hillary said, I am the most qualified candidate you can find. I was in the Senate for 8 years. I was a diplomat, Secretary of State. Of course, I leaked classified information all over the place like a sieve. But I did nothing to provide security in Benghazi. So those 4 guys died on my watch, and I lied and blamed it on a video. But I've got the experience. I'm the most experienced, qualified person in the field. So Hillary, I mean, this is just, it's an absolute ludicrous pipe dream on her part. The Democrats are done with her. They don't want to have anything to do with Hillary Clinton. They're finished with her. She's a death knell. You realize none of the Democrats that are out there running for office are asking her to come and campaign for them. Barack Obama's campaigning for some of them. Hillary Clinton has not been invited anywhere. She's toast. She's done. She's in the archives. Her political career is over. She's the only one in America that doesn't yet know it. All right, one more clip, and then we're going to spend some time talking about this for the rest of the segment, down to the last 11 minutes of the fastest 60 minutes in American media. Here is Donald Trump this morning, and ladies and gentlemen, this is an absolute bombshell, and it's fantastic. I was telling the guys on the break, I've got a good friend who was a congressman from Idaho, conservative guy, just as conservative as you and I are on every issue, whether it's marriage or homosexuality or border security. And I tried to convince him on this issue, convince him to see things the way Donald Trump does, and I couldn't do it. I never could get him over the hump, over the hurdle. But here's what Donald Trump said this morning.
You can definitely do it with an act of Congress, but now they're saying I can do it just with an executive order. Now, how ridiculous. We're the only country in the world where a person comes in, has a baby, and the baby is essentially a citizen of the United States for 85 years with all of those benefits. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And it has to end.
So Donald Trump saying, look, birthright citizenship, it has got to end. We can't, and he's intending to bring it to an end through the use of an executive order. And I'm sure it's going to be tied up in court. I'm sure some low-level tin pot federal judge somewhere, too big for his britches, is going to strike this down and bind the whole country from this and tie the president down with the change of judicial activism and so forth. But there is no reason why Donald Trump cannot do this, and every reason why he should. And he's been talking to the legal beagles he's got in his administration. You're going to hear a lot of opinions, even in the conservative media. I heard Andy McCarthy this morning on Fox News saying, nah, you birthright citizenship, it's a deal. You got to accept it and all that kind of stuff. Well, I want to talk about the Constitution just briefly with you this morning or this afternoon on this issue, because I'm convinced that the plain meaning of the Constitution has been so distorted and so mangled on the issue of birthright citizenship that it's almost the Constitution is almost unrecognizable. Now, I think a correct interpretation of the 14th Amendment makes it clear that there is no such thing as birthright citizenship for the children of illegal aliens. Remember, you got birth tourism going on all over the place. People flying over here from places like China, timing their trip to the United States so that the mothers can give birth to their children on American soil so they can become American citizens and have advantage of all of the perks that goes with it. Now, the 14th Amendment was passed, it was ratified in 1868. And the purpose, of course, it was part of resolving the slavery issue. The 13th Amendment banned slavery, except, by the way, as a punishment for criminal behavior. So slavery, ladies and gentlemen, slavery is still legal in the United States of America. It's right there in the 13th Amendment. You commit a heinous crime, you can be put to work breaking rocks, you can be put in a chain gang, you can be put to work clearing weeds, you can be reduced to involuntary servitude as a punishment for crime. Every other form of slavery, out of here, impermissible by the 13th Amendment. Now, the 14th Amendment was to say to the freed slaves that if they were born or their children were born on American soil, they are hereby conferred citizenship. So the 14th Amendment, 13th Amendment set them free. 14th Amendment said all of these former slaves are now citizens of the United States. And if their children were born here, then their children are citizens of the United States. That was the specific intent of the 14th Amendment. But notice how the first sentence in the 14th Amendment reads. Listen to this very carefully. All persons born or naturalized in the United States, catch this, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Now notice the 14th Amendment does not say all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens of the United States. It doesn't say that. That's what people want to believe that the 14th Amendment believes, it teaches, and that's what it stands for, but it doesn't. Because if that's what it intended, why did they add this phrase about the subject of the jurisdiction thereof? And the point was that if someone is born here on American soil and they and their parents are citizens of another country, they are not citizens of the United States by birth. birthright citizenship only belongs to children that are born to citizens of the United States. If the one who gave birth to you is not a citizen of the United States, but is subject to the jurisdiction of another country, is a citizen of another country, you do not get birthright citizenship. It's referred to people that it's restricted to people that are born on American soil to parents who are citizens of the United States of America. So there is no such thing constitutionally as birthright citizenship for children of illegal aliens. It does not exist. It's a figment. It's a myth. It's a creation of judicial activism. And that's why, by the way, children of diplomats, you know that if a child of a diplomat is born in the United States, he is not a citizen of the United States. Why? Because he is not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, neither he nor his parents. Say he's an ambassador from Denmark, and the ambassador's wife, both of them citizens of Denmark, they have a child on American soil. That child is not a citizen. Nobody's ever thought they were. They've never been a citizen, not from day one. Why? Because they are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, and neither are the children of illegal aliens. Their parents are citizens of another country. And so therefore their parents are subject to the jurisdiction of another country, which is why we can ship them home as soon as we arrest them, and the children are subject to the to foreign jurisdiction and not to the jurisdiction of the United States. Now I want to prove this to you with a couple of illustrations. John Bingham of Ohio, he's considered to be the father of the 14th Amendment. Here's the way he explained the language. He said, every human being born within the jurisdiction of the United States of parents not owing allegiance to any foreign sovereignty is a natural-born citizen. Again, this is a guy that was the father of the 14th Amendment. If the parents owe allegiance to any foreign sovereignty, the child born here is not a natural-born citizen. Now, there was a pretty extensive debate, and this jurisdiction language was only added after an extensive debate. Here's what Senator Jacob Howard of Michigan, who proposed this amendment, proposed this language change, he says he proposed it because he said, I want to make it clear that the simple accident of being born on U.S. soil is not enough to confer citizenship. He said what we're doing is we're taking the Civil Rights Act of 1866 and we're elevating it into the Constitution. So he said this in the debate, the citizenship will not, of course, include persons born in the United States who are foreigners, aliens, who belong to the families of ambassadors or foreign ministers. So these are people whose children are not citizens of the United States simply because they get born here. Foreigners, children of foreigners aren't citizens. Children of aliens, like we have coming across the border, they are not citizens by birth, nor are ambassadors. Now, the United States is, according to Liz Peek, is one of only 2 developed countries in the world that still bestows citizenship on every person who was born on our nation's soil. It's time for that to come to an end. And that's what Donald Trump is planning to do by executive order. I believe he can do this because immigration is entirely under the purview of the president. Remember, Thomas Jefferson said the construction that the founders gave to our form of government is every branch in its own sphere of influence has the right to decide what the Constitution means for them in their sphere of activity. Time to end birthright citizenship. Got a column up. Go to afa.net and read it. We'll see you in about 5 minutes on Focal Point Overtime on Focal Point Facebook.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
1milliondads.com